The transmission from Athalia arrived at exactly 0600 Earth time, precisely when Thelia and Marcus had begun sharing their hybrid morning ritual of light meditation followed by coffee. The holographic form of High Ambassador Drak materialized in the living room, his scales a formal pattern of authoritative blue and silver. Ambassador Nvori, he addressed Thelia without acknowledging Marcus's presence. The Council has reviewed your reports with concern. Your observational protocols appear compromised. Thelia straightened, her scales shifting to formal patterns, though Marcus noticed flickers of apprehension in the undertones. My research continues to yield valuable insights, High Ambassador. Your research has become subjective, Drak countered. You've adopted human practices rather than merely documenting them. His gaze flickered to the coffee mug in her hand, an accommodation Marcus had specially designed for her four-fingered grip. The Council requires your immediate return for reassignment. After the transmission ended, silence hung heavily between them. Marcus watched Thelia's scales cycle through patterns he now recognized as distress, conflict, and something deeper, a pattern he'd only seen when they touched. You have to go, he said finally, his voice hollow. I have duties, she acknowledged, setting down her specially designed mug. Obligations to my people. I understand. No, she said with unexpected sharpness. I don't believe you do. Her scales flared with intensity. On Athalia, diplomatic service is a lifetime commitment. Ambassadors remain unattached, objective. What's happening between us, she gestured to the space between them, could end my career. Marcus drew back slightly. I never meant to it. I know, she interrupted, her voice softening. Neither did I. But it's happened nonetheless. That afternoon, the summons Marcus had been dreading arrived from the Institute. Director Prescott's message was professionally worded but clear. Concerns had been raised about the ethical boundaries of his hosting arrangement with the alien ambassador. His presence was required at an emergency committee meeting the following morning. They've been watching us, Marcus told Thelia that evening, showing her the message. Someone reported our friendship as a potential ethical breach. Friendship, Thelia repeated, her scales flickering with a pattern Marcus now recognized as ironic amusement. Is that the term humans use for what exists between us? Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Thelia had catalogued as indicating human stress. I don't have a term for it. I just know I don't want it to end. That night, knowing it might be their last together, they abandoned pretense. In the quiet darkness of Marcus's living room, illuminated only by the gentle bioluminescence of Thelia's scales, they shared the stories they'd never told anyone else. Marcus spoke of his childhood isolation, his retreat into science as a refuge from a world that never quite understood him. Thelia revealed her early rebellions against Athelian conformity, her choice of diplomatic service as an acceptable channel for her curiosity about the universe. In many ways, she said, her scales glowing with patterns of intimate revelation, I've always been considered an aberration among my kind. Too questioning, too adaptable, too perfect for them, Marcus said softly, tracing the luminous patterns on her arm with a reverence that made her scales pulse brighter. Among Athelians, she whispered, leaning closer. This level of bioluminescence would announce to everyone that I've formed a profound connection. It would be unmistakable. And scandalous? Marcus asked, his fingers still following the swirling patterns. Revolutionary, she corrected, her voice barely audible. There's no precedent for what we are becoming. Their lips met then, an undeniably human gesture that Thelia had researched extensively but never experienced. The alien sensation sent cascades of light pulsing across her entire form, brilliant enough to illuminate the room. Marcus drew back slightly, awed by her luminous response. Is this okay? I should have asked if this is even appropriate for your species. Thelia's laugh was musical. My research indicates that most species develop some form of physical intimacy. The specifics vary, but the underlying purpose remains constant, connection beyond language. She guided his hand to the delicate scales at the base of her neck, where her respiratory slits fluttered rapidly beneath his touch. Here, we are most sensitive. And here, she moved his fingers to trace the almost invisible pattern of scales along her temple, is where Athelians share thoughts in our most intimate moments. With gentle exploration and whispered guidance, they discovered the beautiful convergence of their different biologies, how human kisses against certain scale patterns created cascades of light. How the delicate touch of Thelia's fingers against Marcus's face triggered responses he'd never experienced with any human partner. Later, as they lay entwined in the soft glow of Thelia's continuously shifting patterns, Marcus traced the outlines of her face. Tomorrow they'll try to separate us. Both your people and mine. Thelia's scales dimmed slightly, but she didn't look away. Yes. What do we do? Her scales brightened with determination. We create a new protocol. One that neither of our species has imagined yet. The hearing chamber of the Interstellar Relations Committee fell silent as Marcus and Thelia entered. Together, her four-fingered hand clasped firmly in his five-fingered one. The assembled officials from both Earth and Athalia shifted uncomfortably at this visible evidence of the very attachment they had convened to dismantle. Director Prescott spoke first, his practiced diplomatic tone barely concealing his discomfort. Dr. Right, Ambassador Vori, this hearing has been called to address concerns about compromised objectivity in the cultural exchange program. With respect, Marcus replied, standing tall beside Thelia, we're here to propose an expansion of the program's parameters. High Ambassador Draka's scales flashed with patterns of incredulity. Ambassador Vori was assigned to observe human behavior, not participate in it. Her recent reports show clear emotional contamination. Or perhaps, Thelia countered, her scales displaying formal patterns yet underpinned with subtle determination. They show the success of true cultural exchange, not merely observation, but understanding. For the next hour, they presented their case, not as defendants, but as pioneers. They highlighted historical examples from both worlds where unexpected connections had led to diplomatic breakthroughs. They formally proposed a new classification of interspecies relations, one that acknowledged the potential for deep bonds beyond merely professional cooperation. The existing protocols, Marcus explained, were created before we truly knew each other's species. They're based on assumptions of fundamental difference rather than potential connection. What you propose is unprecedented, Director Prescott said, though Marcus noted his tone had shifted from dismissal to contemplation. Most significant discoveries are, Thelia responded. Her scales displayed a subtle pattern that Marcus now recognized as her equivalent of a diplomatic smile. When they were asked to step outside while the committee deliberated, Marcus paced the hallway while Thelia remained perfectly still, her species' stress response being the opposite of humans. Whatever they decide, she said softly, we've challenged both our worlds to envision something new. Marcus stopped pacing. If they rule against us? Thelia's scales flickered with a complex pattern he hadn't seen before. Then we have choices to make. Difficult ones. Before he could respond, they were called back inside. Director Prescott spoke for the Earth delegation. We've determined that while the current situation is irregular, there may be diplomatic value in exploring these new interspecies dynamics. He cleared his throat awkwardly. Under strict documentation protocols, of course. High Ambassador Draka's scales displayed formal acquiescence, though Marcus detected undertones of continued disapproval. The Athelian Council will permit Ambassador Vori to continue her assignment with amended parameters. With one condition, Director Prescott added. Your relationship will serve as a case study for future interspecies diplomatic training. Both positive and negative outcomes will be recorded for posterity. Thelia's scales brightened with subtle victory patterns. We accept these terms. 3 months later, as Earth's winter gave way to spring, Marcus and Thelia stood before a small gathering in the garden of the Interstellar Cultural Center. Their ceremony was neither fully human nor fully Athelian, but something uniquely their own, a blueprint for the handful of other human-alien pairs who had since come forward. This union, spoke the human officiant, represents not merely a personal commitment but a bridge between worlds. The Athelian elder then stepped forward, her ancient scales shimmering with ceremonial patterns. May your shared journey illuminate paths yet undiscovered. Instead of traditional vows, they performed a ritual they had created together, Marcus offering Thelia a specially formulated blend of tea and coffee that she could safely consume, while she encircled him with the luminous patterns that, on Athalia, symbolized eternal connection. I once found your morning coffee ritual horrifying, Thelia whispered as they completed the ceremony, her scales aglow with joy patterns so intense that even the human guests could perceive their meaning. Now I understand it was the first step on our path together. And I once thought standing meditation was pointless, Marcus replied with a smile. Now I can't imagine starting the day without it. That evening, as representatives from both worlds celebrated around them. Dr. Eliza Kennedy, Marcus's former colleague who had initially reported their relationship, approached them somewhat sheepishly. "I was wrong," she admitted. "When I saw what was happening between you, I thought it would undermine the scientific integrity of the program. Instead, you've expanded its potential beyond what any of us imagined." As the celebration continued around them, Marcus and Thelia slipped away to the observatory balcony. Above them stretched the vast cosmos that had brought them together, stars whose light had traveled unimaginable distances just as they had crossed the gulf between their worlds. "The Athelian constellation of Harmony is visible tonight," Thelia said, pointing to a cluster of stars barely perceptible to human eyes. "My people believe it appears only when significant evolutionary leaps are occurring." Marcus wrapped his arm around her, still marveling at how perfectly they'd learned to fit together despite their different forms. "Does your culture have a myth about star-crossed lovers?" "Not until now," she replied, her scales illuminating with the intimate pattern only he could fully understand. "But I believe we're writing that story ourselves." The next morning, they began their day as they had for months, and as they would for years to come, with their unique ritual that honored both worlds. Light meditation while the coffee brewed, then quiet conversation as they shared the sunrise. Two beings from different stars, creating a universe of understanding between them, one morning ritual at a time.